In the vastness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like waves upon cosmic shores, there exists a fundamental truth that most species learn too late. Never underestimate the quiet ones. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through careful diplomacy, measured responses, and the unspoken understanding that some species were simply too dangerous to provoke. Humanity had joined this council as the newest member, sending their most unremarkable representative, a soft-spoken woman named Sarah Chen who smiled politely, took careful notes, and never raised her voice above a whisper. The other species found her amusing, this fragile creature from a backwater world, with her simple clothes and gentle mannerisms. They had no idea that Earth's greatest diplomatic achievement wasn't sending their best negotiator to the council. It was sending their most dangerous predator and teaching her to smile. What the galaxy was about to learn was that humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of violence, and when you wrap that expertise in the mannerisms of civilization, you don't get a diplomat. You get something far more terrifying. A weapon that says please and thank you before it destroys entire star systems.
The attack on Sarah Chen during the council session wasn't just an act of aggression.
It was the moment the galaxy discovered why humanity's wars had never lasted very long, and why their peace had lasted even shorter. The crystal chambers of the Galactic Council Station hung suspended in the void between three star systems, its translucent walls catching and refracting the light of distant suns into prismatic rainbows that danced across the assembled delegates. Sarah Chen sat in the human section, her small frame almost lost in the oversized chair designed to accommodate the diverse physiologies of 47 different species. Her fingers moved steadily across her data pad, taking notes in the neat, precise handwriting that had become familiar to many council members over the past 2 years. She looked unremarkable by any standard. Average height for a human, perhaps slightly built, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wearing the same style of gray diplomatic jacket she favored for every session. Her face carried the kind of pleasant, forgettable features that made her blend into crowds, and her voice, when she spoke at all, was soft and measured. To the other delegates, she represented everything they had come to expect from humanity: understated, careful, and ultimately harmless. The Zephyrian delegate, a towering crystalline being whose body chimed softly with each movement, was addressing the assembly about mining rights in the Outer Rim. Sarah listened attentively, occasionally making notes, her expression one of polite interest. She had perfected this look over countless hours of diplomatic training, learning to project engaged attention while her mind processed information at speeds that would have surprised her colleagues. "The humans remain silent as always," murmured Kefvar, the hegemony representative, his serpentine form coiled in the section adjacent to Sarah's. His words carried clearly in the chamber's acoustics, intended for her to hear. Perhaps they have nothing useful to contribute to such complex matters. Sarah's pen paused for the briefest moment before continuing its steady movement across the page. She had grown accustomed to such comments. The Council had been operating for 3 millennia before humanity was even invited to observe, let alone participate. Most species viewed Earth's admission as a charitable gesture, a way to include the galaxy's newest spacefaring race in the democratic process, even if they had little of value to offer. The truth was more complex, but Sarah had learned early in her diplomatic career that truth and perception rarely aligned in political arenas. Earth had been admitted to the Council not out of charity, but out of necessity. Humanity's rapid expansion into space, their unsettling efficiency in developing new technologies, and their disturbing habit of winning conflicts they should have lost had made them impossible to ignore. The Council preferred to keep potential threats close, wrapped in the comfortable blanket of diplomatic protocol. Ambassador Thelcora of the Maritime Federation rose to address the mining proposal, her aquatic form undulating gracefully in her liquid-filled mobility suit. Sarah had always found the ambassador's species fascinating. Their thought patterns flowed like currents, making them natural mediators but poor strategists. Today, however, something in Thelcora's posture suggested agitation. "The Maritime Federation cannot support the Zephyrian proposal," Thelcora announced, her translated words carrying undertones of distress. Our analysis indicates that the proposed mining operation would destabilize the gravitational balance of the Kepler 442 system, potentially threatening our colony worlds. This sparked immediate discussion among the delegates. The Kepler T42 system contained 3 habitable worlds, each supporting different council species. Any gravitational disruption could indeed prove catastrophic, but the Zephyrians needed the rare minerals found in that system's asteroid belts to maintain their crystalline cities. Sarah continued taking notes, but her attention shifted to analyzing the developing conflict. She had studied the geological surveys of Kepler 442 during her preparation for this session. The Maritime Federation's concerns were valid but overstated. The gravitational effects would be minimal and temporary. However, their real concern likely stemmed from economic competition rather than genuine safety issues. The maritime colonies in that system had been struggling financially, and any disruption to their already fragile trade relationships could prove devastating. The Zephyrian delegates' crystalline form darkened slightly, a sign of agitation in their species. The Maritime Federation's objections are based on flawed calculations, they chimed, their harmonic voice taking on discordant notes. Our mining operations have never caused significant gravitational disruption in any system. We have 3,000 years of operational data to support this claim. Your data does not account for the unique properties of the Kepler 42 system, Thelcora replied, her aquatic form rippling with emotion. The presence of dark matter concentrations makes gravitational prediction extremely difficult. We cannot risk our colony worlds for mineral extraction. Sarah recognized the impasse developing. Both species had valid points, but neither was willing to acknowledge the other's concerns. Without intervention, this would likely escalate to a formal dispute, requiring months of mediation and potentially damaging relationships between 2 species that had been allies for centuries. The human diplomat raised her hand slightly, a gesture that caught the attention of Council Speaker Mor Eldon, an ancient being whose species had been among the Council's founders. The speaker's multiple eyes focused on Sarah with something approaching surprise. In 2 years of attendance, she had rarely sought to address the assembly. The chair recognizes the representative from Earth, Mor Eldon announced in their creaking ancient voice. Sarah rose slowly, her datapad in hand. Thank you, Speaker Mor Eldon. If I may suggest a compromise? Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's amplification system, soft but perfectly audible to all present. She could feel the attention of 47 species focusing on her, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed condescension. The hegemony delegate, Kethvar, actually laughed, a harsh barking sound that echoed unpleasantly in the crystal chamber. By all means, he said, making no effort to hide his amusement. Let us hear what wisdom the newest species can offer to this ancient dispute. Sarah's expression didn't change, but those who knew her well might have noticed the slight tightening around her eyes. I had the opportunity to review the geological data for the Kepler 442 system during my preparation for this session. She began, her tone remaining conversational and unthreatening. Both the Zephyrian mining projections and the Maritime Federation's gravitational concerns appear to be based on incomplete information. She activated her datapad's projection system, displaying a 3-dimensional model of the Kepler 42 system. The dark matter concentrations that concern the Maritime Federation are indeed present, but they follow a predictable pattern based on the system's binary star configuration. The Zephyrian mining operation, if conducted in phases and timed to correspond with the binary orbit cycle, could actually help stabilize the gravitational fluctuations rather than exacerbate them. The projection showed the proposed mining operation, but with timing and positioning modifications that neither side had considered. Sarah had spent the previous evening running calculations applying human engineering principles that the galaxy hadn't yet encountered. Her species' talent for improvisation and lateral thinking had identified a solution that transformed a zero-sum conflict into mutual benefit. Thelcora's form stilled as she studied the projection. These calculations, they suggest the mining operation could serve as a gravitational anchor during binary periapsis. How is this possible? Humans have extensive experience with gravitational engineering, Sarah replied simply. Our home system required significant modification to support our expansion. We've developed techniques for using mass distribution to stabilize orbital mechanics. The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form brightened noticeably. This approach would allow us to extract twice the projected mineral yield while improving system stability. The engineering requirements would be complex but manageable. Kethvar's serpentine form tensed visibly. And I suppose humanity would expect compensation for this generous assistance? Sarah's smile remained pleasant and unthreatening. The Galactic Council operates on principles of mutual cooperation and shared benefit. Earth would be honored to contribute our engineering expertise to support this project with the understanding that such cooperation strengthens the bonds between all member species. It was a masterfully diplomatic response that committed humanity to nothing while opening the door for future negotiations. Sarah had learned that in galactic politics, the most valuable currency wasn't resources or territory, but debt and obligation. By solving this crisis, humanity would earn goodwill from two powerful council factions while demonstrating capabilities that most species had underestimated. The debate that followed Sarah's proposal was markedly different from the earlier deadlock. Both the Maritime Federation and the Zephyrians found merit in the human solution, and other council members began contributing refinements and suggestions. What had threatened to become a bitter dispute transformed into collaborative problem-solving, with Sarah's quiet guidance steering the discussion toward consensus. As the session progressed, Sarah noticed several delegates paying closer attention to her contributions. The Architethys representative, whose species was known for their strategic thinking, had begun taking notes whenever she spoke. The collective's hive mind representative had assigned additional processing power to analyzing her suggestions. Even species that had previously ignored human presence were beginning to reassess their assumptions. This was the outcome Sarah had been working toward for 2 years. Humanity's integration into the galactic community couldn't be achieved through force or demands for recognition. It required patience, competence, and the gradual accumulation of respect and influence. Every crisis she helped resolve, every conflict she diffused, added to humanity's growing reputation as valuable council members rather than primitive newcomers. The formal vote on the modified Kepler 442 proposal passed with overwhelming support, representing one of the fastest resolutions to a major resource dispute in Council history. As delegates began filing out of the chamber, many stopped to offer thanks or congratulations to Sarah. She accepted each graciously, her demeanor remaining humble and understated despite the significance of her achievement. Thelcora approached as Sarah was gathering her materials. Your species continues to surprise us, Representative Chen. The Maritime Federation would welcome the opportunity to collaborate with Earth on future gravitational engineering projects. I'll be sure to pass your interest along to our engineering councils, Sarah replied. The Maritime Federation's expertise in fluid dynamics could contribute significantly to our own research programs. As the chamber emptied, Sarah remained in her seat, reviewing her notes from the session. She added brief comments about delicate reactions, potential future alliances, and strategic opportunities that had emerged from the day's discussions. This information would be included in her regular reports to Earth, helping to shape humanity's ongoing diplomatic strategy. Speaker Moreldon approached, their ancient form moving with surprising grace despite their considerable age. An impressive performance today, Representative Chen. Your species has a talent for finding solutions where others see only problems. Sarah looked up from her notes, offering the same pleasant smile she had worn throughout the session. We've learned that most problems have solutions if you're willing to look at them from different angles, Speaker Moreldon. Human history has taught us the value of creative thinking. The ancient being's multiple eyes studied her with an intensity that suggested deeper consideration. Indeed, your species' history is unique among council members. Most civilizations that develop your technological capabilities so rapidly tend toward aggressive expansion rather than diplomatic integration. It was a careful way of acknowledging what every council member suspected but rarely discussed. that humanity's peaceful approach to galactic politics was a choice rather than a limitation. Earth could have demanded council membership through military pressure or economic leverage, but had instead chosen the longer, more difficult path of earning acceptance through contribution and cooperation. We found that cooperation generally produces better outcomes than conflict, Sarah replied, her tone remaining conversational. Our history includes plenty of both approaches, and we've learned to value the former. Humanity's restraint wasn't born from weakness or naivety, but from experience and calculation. The Council had spent 3 millennia maintaining peace through careful balance and measured responses, but they were dealing with a species that had compressed that same learning process into a much shorter time frame. As Sarah finally packed away her materials and prepared to leave the chamber, she reflected on the day's progress. The resolution of the Kepler 4.2 dispute would strengthen humanity's position in future council deliberations, while the engineering collaboration with both the Maritime Federation and the Zephyrines would provide valuable opportunities for technological and cultural exchange. More importantly, the demonstration of human problem-solving capabilities would encourage other species to view Earth as a valuable ally rather than a potential threat. The walk back to her quarters took her through the station's diplomatic district, where representatives from dozens of species maintained offices and residences during council sessions. Sarah exchanged polite greetings with colleagues she encountered, noting which species made effort to engage with her and which continued to maintain distance. These social dynamics were as important as formal council proceedings in shaping galactic politics. Her quarters were modest by the standards of more established council species, but Sarah had always preferred simplicity to ostentation. The main room contained her workspace, furnished with human-designed furniture that prioritized function over appearance. The walls displayed star charts and diplomatic protocols rather than decorative art, reflecting her practical approach to her assignment. Sarah activated her communication console and began preparing her daily report to Earth. The time difference between the council station and Geneva meant her superiors would receive the update during their morning briefing, allowing them to adjust diplomatic instructions for the following day's sessions if necessary. Daily report day 847, she began, speaking into the console's recording system. Resolution achieved for the Kepler 4.2 mining dispute through compromise proposal, incorporating human gravitational engineering expertise. Both Maritime Federation and Zephyrian delegations expressed interest in future collaboration. Council Speaker Morelden demonstrated increased attention to human contributions during closing discussions. She paused, considering how much detail to include about the subtle power dynamics she had observed. Recommend continued focus on technical contribution and conflict resolution rather than direct political positioning. Several species showing reassessment of human capabilities, but premature assertion of influence could trigger defensive responses from established power structures. The recording system captured her analysis of potential opportunities and risks emerging from the day's proceedings. Sarah had learned to balance comprehensiveness with conciseness in her reports, providing enough detail for informed decision-making without overwhelming her recipients with unnecessary information. As she concluded the report and transmitted it to Earth, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 2 years of careful work were beginning to produce the results humanity had hoped for when they selected her for this assignment. The galaxy was slowly learning that Earth could be trusted with greater responsibilities, setting the stage for humanity's eventual emergence as a major council power. But tonight, like every night, Sarah Chen went to sleep in her modest quarters, maintaining the unremarkable facade that had served her so well. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to demonstrate that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their ships or weapons, but in their ability to find peaceful solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The galaxy still had no idea what Earth's diplomat was truly capable of. That revelation would come soon enough. The diplomatic reception hall buzzed with the sophisticated chaos of 47 species attempting to socialize. Bioluminescent beings from the deep current worlds created shifting patterns of light across the ceiling, while the silicon-based architects hummed harmonious frequencies that resonated through the station's crystal structure. Sarah Chen moved through the gathering with her characteristic quiet grace, a glass of what passed for wine among human-compatible beverages in her hand, listening more than speaking. These informal gatherings were often more valuable than formal council sessions. Away from the structured protocols of official proceedings, delegates revealed their true opinions, formed private alliances, and sometimes let slip information that could reshape the political landscape. Sarah had learned to navigate these social currents with the same careful attention she applied to official diplomacy. Representative Chen called a familiar harmonic voice. Sarah turned to see Ambassador Zeftao, one of the younger Zephyrian Council members, approaching with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. The crystalline being's faceted surface sparkled with excited patterns. I wanted to thank you again for your contribution to the Kepler 442 resolution. Our engineering corps is fascinated by your gravitational stabilization concepts. Sarah smiled warmly. I'm pleased the proposal was helpful. The Zephyrians have always impressed me with their ability to work with natural forces rather than against them. Your crystal growing techniques could probably teach us new approaches to space construction. It was a careful compliment that acknowledged Zephyrian expertise while subtly suggesting mutual benefit rather than one-sided assistance. Sarah had studied each species' cultural preferences and pride points during her preparation for this assignment, understanding that successful diplomacy required speaking to each group's self-image. Perhaps we could arrange a technical exchange, Zeftao suggested, their harmonic voice taking on excited overtones. Young engineers from both our species could benefit from collaboration. Fresh perspectives often lead to breakthrough innovations. Before Sarah could respond, a new presence inserted itself into their conversation. Kethvar, the hegemony representative, slithered between them with practiced political smoothness, his scaled form gleaming under the reception hall's mixed lighting. Unlike his public displays of condescension, his private demeanor carried a different energy, calculating and predatory. How delightful, he said, his translated voice carrying false warmth, the newest council member making friends with the younger delegates. One might almost think you were building some kind of coalition, Representative Chen. Sarah's expression remained pleasantly neutral, but she noted the subtle threat in his words. The hegemony had been one of the council's dominant powers for over a millennium, and they viewed any shift in the political balance with suspicion. Her recent success in resolving the Kepler being coupled 442 dispute had apparently drawn unwanted attention. I've always found that understanding different perspectives helps identify better solutions, Sarah replied diplomatically. The council's strength comes from the diversity of its membership, doesn't it? Kethvar's serpentine eyes fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. Indeed. Though some perspectives are more experienced than others, it would be unfortunate if newer members overestimated their understanding of complex galactic politics. The threat was barely veiled now. Zeftao's crystalline form dimmed slightly, recognizing the tension developing in the conversation. Other nearby delegates began paying attention, sensing the potential for diplomatic conflict. Sarah took a careful sip of her drink, using the moment to consider her response. Direct confrontation would serve Kethvar's purposes, allowing him to paint humanity as aggressive or unreasonable. But backing down completely would signal weakness and invite further pressure. Experience is certainly valuable, she said finally, though sometimes fresh eyes can spot opportunities that familiarity might overlook. The Council has always benefited from combining established wisdom with innovative thinking. It was a masterful deflection that acknowledged his experience while asserting her right to contribute without directly challenging his authority. Kethvar's scaled features tightened almost imperceptibly. Sarah's diplomatic skill was making it difficult for him to escalate the confrontation without appearing unreasonable himself. "How very optimistic," he replied, the word carrying subtle disdain. "I hope such optimism proves well-founded. The galaxy can be quite harsh to those who misunderstand their position within it." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Thelcora, her aquatic form graceful in its environmental suit. Representative Chen, I've been looking forward to speaking with you about the engineering collaboration we discussed. Oh, hello, Kethvar. I didn't see you there. The Maritime Federation ambassador's timing was impeccable, and her apparent dismissal of the hegemony representative was clearly intentional. Sarah recognized a lifeline when she saw one and gracefully accepted the opportunity to extract herself from an increasingly uncomfortable situation. Of course, Ambassador Thelcora. If you'll excuse us, Kethvar, Zeftal. Sarah nodded politely to both before allowing Thelcora to guide her toward a quieter section of the reception hall. Once they were out of earshot, Thelcora's aquatic form rippled with what Sarah had learned to recognize as concern. You should be careful around Kethvar. The hegemony doesn't appreciate challenges to their authority, even implied ones. Sarah appreciated the warning, though she suspected her situation was more complicated than the maritime ambassador realized.
I haven't challenged anyone's authority.
I've simply tried to contribute constructively to council proceedings, which is precisely the problem, Thelcora replied. Your constructive contributions have been quite effective. Too effective for some tastes. The hegemony has grown accustomed to being the council's primary problem solvers. Your success threatens their position. This confirms Sarah's growing suspicion that her diplomatic progress was creating unintended consequences. Success in galactic politics apparently carried its own risks, particularly when it came at the expense of established power structures. She would need to adjust her approach to account for these political realities. What would you recommend? Sarah asked, genuinely curious about the experienced diplomat's perspective. Thelcora's form stilled as she considered her response. The Maritime Federation has navigated similar challenges during our early council membership. The key is building broader alliances before the established powers can organize opposition. No single species, however influential, can stand against a coalition of determined allies. It was sound advice, though Sarah recognized the dangers it implied. Building coalitions could be interpreted as preparation for political conflict, potentially escalating tensions rather than diffusing them. She would need to be extremely careful about how she pursued such relationships. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the reception hall's entrance. Several delegates had gathered around a late arrival, Ambassador Vorpak of the Iron Commonwealth, whose species rarely attended social functions. The Commonwealth represented one of the galaxy's most militarily powerful civilizations, and their ambassador's presence at a diplomatic reception was highly unusual. Vorpak's metallic form towered over most other delegates, their cybernetic enhancements gleaming under the hall's lighting. Sarah had interacted with them only briefly during formal council sessions, as the Commonwealth typically focused on security matters rather than economic or social issues. Their appearance at tonight's gathering suggested something significant was developing. "Excuse me," Thelcora murmured, "but I should probably investigate this development." The Commonwealth doesn't socialize without good reason. Sarah nodded, understanding the diplomatic imperative. As Thelcora moved toward the gathering crowd, Sarah remained in place, observing the reactions of other delegates. Several species appeared nervous about Vorpak's presence, while others seemed intrigued. The hegemony representatives had clustered together in what appeared to be hasty consultation. Moving closer while maintaining the appearance of casual interest, Sarah positioned herself where she could overhear fragments of the conversation surrounding the Commonwealth ambassador. What she heard sent a chill through her diplomatic composure. Border incursions in the Vega sector, unidentified vessels using quantum disruption technology. 3 colonies have gone silent in the past month. The pieces formed a disturbing picture. Vorpak's metallic gaze fixed on Kethvar with obvious disapproval. The Iron Commonwealth has always found that crisis situations benefit from all available expertise regardless of its source. Dismissing potential allies based on political convenience seems unwise, given the severity of our current situation. The Commonwealth's support carried significant weight in security matters, and Kethvar's expression showed he recognized the rebuke. Sarah maintained her neutral expression while mentally noting another potential diplomatic ally. Vorpak's intervention suggested the Commonwealth viewed humanity's technical capabilities as potentially valuable. As the evening progressed, the reception transformed into a series of smaller strategy sessions. Security-focused species gathered around Vorpak to discuss defensive coordination, while economically powerful civilizations debated the potential impact on trade routes. Sarah found herself in the unusual position of being courted by multiple groups, each hoping to gain access to humanity's unique technological perspectives. The situation presented both opportunity and risk. Active participation in crisis response could significantly advance humanity's standing within the Council, but it would also expose Earth's capabilities to closer scrutiny. Sarah would need to balance contribution with discretion, helping to address the threat while maintaining strategic ambiguity about humanity's true potential. As the formal reception concluded and delegates began returning to their quarters, Sarah made her way back through corridors that felt subtly different than they had hours earlier. The station's peaceful atmosphere had been replaced by an undercurrent of tension and uncertainty. Security personnel from multiple species had increased their presence, and she noticed several delegates engaged in hushed conversations that ended abruptly when others approached. Back in her quarters, Sarah immediately activated her secure communication system and began preparing an urgent report to Earth. The emergence of this new threat would require careful coordination with her superiors, particularly regarding how much assistance humanity should offer and how to position their contribution for maximum diplomatic benefit. Priority communication classification urgent, she began. Unknown force conducting systematic attacks on Council member worlds using advanced quantum disruption technology. Iron Commonwealth confirms 7 incidents with 3 worlds completely isolated. Immediate consultation required regarding Earth's response and potential contribution to Council defense efforts. She paused, considering how to convey the political implications of the crisis. Current situation provides significant opportunity to advance human standing within Council security structure, but also carries risks of premature exposure of Earth's technological capabilities. Recommend measured response demonstrating valuable contribution. As Sarah transmitted her report and settled in to await Earth's response, she reflected on how quickly the diplomatic landscape could shift. Yesterday's careful maneuvering around trade disputes and resource allocation had suddenly become secondary to questions of survival and mutual defense. The unknown attackers had inadvertently created an opportunity for humanity to prove their worth as Council members, but only if Earth's response was calibrated correctly. Outside her quarters viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, seemingly unchanged by the crisis developing among the civilizations that had spread across their domains. Sarah had learned not to be deceived by such apparent tranquility. The galaxy was vast and full of surprises, some wonderful and others potentially catastrophic. Tonight's revelation suggested that humanity's careful integration into galactic society was about to face its first major test. How Earth responded to this crisis would likely determine their future relationship with the Council for decades to come. Sarah Chen, the quiet diplomat who had spent 2 years building relationships and demonstrating competence, was about to discover whether her efforts had prepared humanity for this moment. The real question was whether the galaxy was prepared for humanity's response. The emergency council session convened 18 hours after Vorpak's announcement, with delegates arriving in waves as ships from across the galaxy responded to the crisis alert. The crystal chamber that usually hosted measured debates over trade routes and resource allocation now hummed with urgent energy. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across faces that showed varying degrees of fear, anger, and determination. Sarah Chen had received her instructions from Earth just 3 hours before the session began. The message had been brief but clear: demonstrate human capability while maintaining operational security. Her superiors had been remarkably specific about what information to share and what to keep confidential. Speaker Morelden called the emergency session to order with unusual brevity, their ancient form showing signs of stress that Sarah had never witnessed before.
The Council faces a threat unlike any in our recorded history.
Ambassador Vorpak will present the updated intelligence followed by proposals for coordinated response. Vorpak's metallic form dominated the center of the chamber as holographic displays materialized around them. The data was grim. In the 18 hours since the reception, 3 more worlds had gone silent, and long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures moving toward the core systems. The unknown force has accelerated their operations, Vorpak announced, their cybernetic voice carrying undertones of controlled anger. Analysis of quantum disruption patterns suggests at least 12 vessels of unprecedented power, each capable of disabling an entire world's defensive grid. The displayed tactical information sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. Sarah studied the data with growing concern, recognizing patterns that suggested these attackers possessed not just advanced technology but sophisticated intelligence about Council capabilities and weaknesses. Most disturbing, Vorpak continued, is evidence that these attacks are coordinated with inside knowledge of our defensive protocols. Sensor logs show the attackers bypassing primary defensive systems to target secondary backup networks that few species even know exist. The implication hung heavy in the chamber. Someone within the Council was either collaborating with the attackers or had been compromised. Sarah watched as delegates began eyeing each other with suspicion, the unity of the previous evening already fragmenting under the pressure of existential threat. Kethvar rose from his position, his serpentine form coiled with visible tension. The hegemony demands immediate implementation of emergency security protocols. All member species must submit to intelligence review to identify potential infiltrators or traitors.
The suggestion sparked immediate protest from multiple delegates.
The idea of submitting to hegemony-controlled intelligence review was tantamount to surrendering sovereignty, something many species would never accept voluntarily. The Maritime Federation cannot accept such measures, Thelcora declared, her aquatic form rippling with agitation. Hegemony access to our intelligence networks would compromise our operational security even if we survive this current threat. Similar protests arose from other delegates, and Sarah realized the crisis was about to tear apart the Council's unity just when they needed it most. The attackers couldn't have planned a more effective strategy for weakening their targets than triggering this kind of internal conflict. Speaker Morelden raised their multiple hands for silence. The situation requires measured response, not panic. We must focus on defending our worlds while maintaining the principles that unite us. Ambassador Chen, your earlier report mentioned potential human contribution to our intelligence efforts. Would you elaborate? Sarah had been hoping for an opportunity to contribute without appearing to seek advantage from the crisis. Standing slowly, she activated her personal data display and projected information that had been carefully selected to demonstrate capability. Earth's monitoring networks have detected quantum disturbance patterns consistent with the reported attacks. She began, her voice carrying the same calm professionalism that had become her trademark. Our analysis suggests the attackers are using a form of quantum tunneling that creates predictable resonance signatures. The displayed data showed quantum resonance patterns detected by Earth's deep space monitoring stations. Sarah had been authorized to share this information because it revealed human technical competence without exposing the full extent of their capabilities. More importantly, she continued, these resonance signatures appear to be traceable. Our preliminary analysis indicates we may be able to track the attackers' movement patterns and potentially predict their next targets. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications. If humanity could track the attackers, it would represent the first actionable intelligence the Council had received since the crisis began. Vorpak's cybernetic features focused on Sarah with obvious interest. The Iron Commonwealth would appreciate access to this tracking data. Our defensive preparations could benefit significantly from advance warning of attack locations. Sarah nodded respectfully. Earth would be honored to share our tracking data with Council defense efforts. However, the quantum resonance detection requires specialized equipment that we would need to deploy to key monitoring positions throughout Council space. It was a carefully constructed offer that provided genuine assistance while positioning human personnel and technology at strategic locations. Sarah's superiors had anticipated that effective response to this crisis would require expanding Earth's presence within Council territory. Zeftal's crystalline form brightened with excitement. The Zephyrian hegemony could provide installation support for monitoring equipment. Our engineering expertise with quantum phenomena could complement human detection technology. Before Sarah could respond, Kethvar's harsh voice cut through the developing collaboration. How convenient that the newest council member happens to possess exactly the technology needed to address our crisis. One might question whether this timing is purely coincidental. The accusation struck the chamber like a physical blow. Sarah felt every delegate's attention focus on her with new suspicion, and she realized Kethvar was attempting to paint humanity as potential collaborators with the attackers. It was a masterful political maneuver that could destroy both her credibility and Earth's standing within the Council. Her training took over, suppressing emotional reaction in favor of calculated response. The hegemony representative raises a fair question that deserves a clear answer, she said, her voice remaining calm despite the gravity of the accusation. Earth's monitoring capabilities stem from our species' particular approach to space exploration. Our history of operating in isolation required us to develop extensive sensor networks for detecting potential threats. She gestured to her data display, which now showed the evolution of human space monitoring over several centuries. Unlike species that developed within the safety of established galactic civilization, humanity had to assume we might encounter hostile forces at any time. Our sensor networks reflect that paranoia rather than any foreknowledge of current events. The explanation was truthful while carefully omitting the full extent of human military preparation. Sarah had been authorized to reveal their monitoring capabilities precisely because they represented defensive rather than offensive technology, though the distinction was somewhat artificial. Thelcora's intervention proved timely and decisive. The Maritime Federation has monitored human space activities since their emergence as a spacefaring species. Their sensor network development clearly predates any knowledge of current galactic threats. Representative Kethvar's suspicions appear unfounded. The aquatic ambassador's support carried significant weight, and Sarah noted several other delegates nodding agreement. Kethvar's political maneuver had backfired, making him appear paranoid rather than prudent. Vorpak seized control of the discussion before Kethvar could respond. Political suspicions serve no purpose while our worlds remain under attack. The Iron Commonwealth proposes immediate implementation of human tracking technology across key monitoring positions. Time favors our enemies with every moment we spend on internal conflicts. The Commonwealth's practical approach resonated with delegates facing the destruction of their home worlds. Within minutes, the chamber had organized into working groups focused on implementing Sarah's tracking proposal rather than debating its political implications. Sarah found herself at the center of frantic planning as species after species volunteered resources for deploying Earth's monitoring technology. The Zephyrians offered engineering support, the Maritime Federation provided transportation, and even some traditionally isolationist species contributed strategic intelligence about vulnerable systems. The transformation was remarkable. In less than 2 hours, she had gone from being an object of suspicion to becoming essential to the Council's defense efforts. However, Sarah recognized that her new prominence came with corresponding risks. Success in this endeavor would advance humanity's position dramatically, but failure would likely result in their exclusion from future Council activities. As the working groups dispersed to begin implementation, Sarah remained in the chamber to coordinate with Vorpak regarding Commonwealth security requirements. The metallic ambassador's approach was refreshingly direct compared to the complex diplomatic maneuvering she had grown accustomed to. "Your species has impressive technical capabilities," Vorpak observed, their cybernetic features displaying data streams related to the monitoring deployment. The Commonwealth would be interested in broader technological exchange once this crisis is resolved. Sarah appreciated both the compliment and the implied invitation to future cooperation. The Commonwealth's defensive expertise could certainly contribute to our own security preparations. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent alerts from monitoring stations across the galaxy. Sarah's tracking system had detected new quantum disturbance patterns, indicating another wave of attacks was imminent. The attackers were moving faster than anyone had anticipated, suggesting they were aware of the Council's defensive preparations. 3 systems showing disturbance signatures, Sarah announced, studying the data feeds displayed on her personal screen. Tau Ceti Ross 248 and, she paused, double-checking the readings, Wolf 359. They're targeting heavily populated systems this time. Vorpak's metallic form stiffened with alarm. Wolf 359 hosted the Commonwealth's largest shipbuilding facility, while Tau Ceti contained major maritime Federation colonies. The attackers had shifted from isolated frontier worlds to strategic industrial targets. The pattern suggests they're preparing for extended operations, Sarah continued, her diplomatic training helping her remain calm despite the implications.
Eliminating shipbuilding and industrial capacity would prevent us from mounting effective resistance to subsequent attacks. The chamber erupted into controlled chaos as delegates received similar alerts from their own monitoring systems.
What had begun as mysterious attacks on frontier worlds had evolved into systematic warfare against galactic civilization itself. Speaker Morelden's ancient voice cut through the confusion. All available defense fleets are to respond immediately to threatened systems. This council session is suspended pending resolution of the immediate threat. As delegates scattered to coordinate their species' responses, Sarah found herself facing a critical decision. Earth's defensive fleets were positioned throughout human space, ready to respond if called upon, but revealing their full military capability would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Her instructions from Earth had been clear but necessarily vague. Use her judgment to determine how much to reveal based on the developing situation. The attack on Wolf 359 made the decision for her. The Commonwealth had been humanity's strongest supporter in recent hours, and their shipbuilding capabilities were essential to mounting any serious defense against the attackers. If Wolf 359 fell, the galaxy's ability to resist would be critically compromised. Sarah activated her personal communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. Situation critical. Recommend immediate deployment to protect Commonwealth assets. Authorization requested for revelation of fleet capabilities. The response came within minutes, carrying the authority of Earth's highest levels. Authorization granted. Protect our allies. As Sarah prepared to reveal that humanity possessed one of the galaxy's most powerful space fleets, she reflected on how quickly diplomatic situations could transform. Yesterday, she had been building relationships through careful negotiation and compromise. Today, she was about to announce that Earth could deploy military assets capable of engaging unknown attackers that had terrified the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The quiet diplomat was about to remove her mask, and the galaxy would finally see what humanity had been keeping in reserve. Whether that revelation would be welcomed or feared remained to be seen, but Sarah Chen was about to find out just how much trust she had actually built over 2 years of careful diplomacy. Outside the crystal chambers, alarms began sounding throughout the station as reports arrived from the attacked systems. The unknown enemy had revealed their true intentions, and the galaxy's response would determine whether civilization itself survived what was coming. Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to change everything. The tactical center of the council station had been transformed into a war room within hours. Holographic displays showed the real-time status of 3 besieged systems, while delegates huddled around communication arrays receiving updates from their defense fleets. The atmosphere crackled with desperate energy as the galaxy's leaders watched their carefully maintained peace crumble under assault from an unknown enemy. Sarah Chen stood before the central command display, her fingers dancing across controls that most delegates hadn't even known existed on their supposedly ceremonial station. The transformation from diplomatic facility to military command center had revealed layers of defensive capability that spoke to the Council's long-hidden preparations for exactly this kind of crisis. Commonwealth fleet engaging unknown vessels at Wolf 359. reported Vorpak, their metallic voice carrying undertones of strain that Sarah had never heard before. Initial contact. Contact loss quantum interference is blocking all communications with the system. Similar reports came in from the other targeted systems. The attackers' quantum disruption technology was proving devastatingly effective, cutting off entire star systems from galactic communications within minutes of engagement. The defending fleets were fighting blind, isolated from any possibility of coordination or support. Kethvar's serpentine form coiled with visible agitation as reports from his species' territories painted an increasingly dire picture. Hegemony forces report complete sensor blackout before contact was lost. These attackers possess capabilities that exceed our most advanced defensive projections. Sarah watched the tactical displays with growing alarm, but also with calculation. The attackers were demonstrating exactly the kind of overwhelming technological superiority that Earth's military planners had been preparing to counter for decades. Humanity's approach to space warfare had been shaped by the assumption that they would eventually face opponents with superior individual capabilities, leading to tactical doctrines that emphasized coordination, adaptability, and unconventional strategies. The authorization from Earth had been clear, but Sarah knew that revealing humanity's military capabilities would fundamentally alter their position within galactic society. The careful diplomatic relationship she had built over 2 years would be recontextualized through the lens of humanity's true potential. There would be no returning to the comfortable fiction that Earth was simply another peaceful civilization seeking its place among the stars. Representative Chen, Speaker Moore Eldon's ancient voice carried unusual urgency. Your tracking systems are our only source of intelligence about enemy movements. Can your monitoring network provide tactical information to assist our defense fleets? Sarah took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. Speaker Moore Eldon, with the Council's permission, Earth can do more than provide tracking information. We can provide direct military assistance. The tactical center fell silent except for the soft humming of alien technology and the distant throb of the station's defensive systems charging to combat readiness. Every delegate's attention focused on Sarah with an intensity that made her acutely aware of the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. Our defense fleets have been monitoring the situation and are prepared to respond immediately to assist Council forces, she continued, her voice maintaining its characteristic calm despite the earthquake she was triggering in galactic politics. Earth has maintained significant defensive capabilities due to our historical isolation and the assumption that we might face unknown threats. Vorpak's cybernetic features process this information with visible surprise. Earth possesses combat-capable fleets? Our intelligence assessments indicated minimal human military development beyond basic system defense. It was a polite way of asking whether humanity had been deliberately concealing their capabilities, and Sarah knew her answer would determine whether Earth was viewed as a trusted ally or a potential threat. The truth was more complex than either alternative, but diplomatic nuance was a luxury they couldn't afford while worlds burned. Earth's military development has been focused on defensive rather than expansionist capabilities, she explained carefully. Our historical experience suggested that survival in a dangerous galaxy would require significant defensive preparations, but we chose not to advertise these capabilities during our integration into Council society.
Kethvar's harsh laugh echoed through the tactical center.
How convenient. The peaceful newcomers reveal hidden fleets precisely when they can profit from appearing as saviors. One might question whether this entire crisis has been orchestrated for political advantage. The accusation was serious enough to destroy humanity's credibility entirely, but Sarah had been preparing for this possibility since receiving her authorization codes. Her response had been crafted during the flight to the Council station and refined through months of contingency planning. Representative Kethvar's suspicions are understandable but unfounded, she replied, activating her personal display to show deployment schedules and fleet positions. Earth's defensive preparations began centuries before we knew galactic civilization existed. Our fleets have been positioned in human space since long before our Council membership, and deployment logs can verify their historical positions. The displayed information showed human fleet deployments dating back decades, clearly predating Earth's knowledge of the Council's existence. More importantly, the fleet positions were clearly defensive, concentrated around major human colonies rather than positioned for offensive operations against galactic targets. Thelcora's aquatic form rippled with what Sarah had learned to recognize as consideration. The Maritime Federation's historical monitoring confirms Representative Chen's statements. Human military development appeared defensive in nature and appropriate for a species developing independently in potentially hostile space. The support from an established council member carried significant weight, but Sarah knew the real test would come when Earth's fleets actually engaged the attackers. Military capability revealed through action was far more convincing than diplomatic explanations. Time grows short, Vorpak interjected, their practical nature overriding political considerations. If Earth possesses forces capable of engaging these attackers, the Commonwealth requests immediate deployment. Our shipbuilding facilities cannot be allowed to fall. Sarah nodded and activated her emergency communications array, broadcasting coded signals that would reach Earth's command structure within minutes. Earth's Third Fleet is positioned within 6 hours of Wolf 359. They are moving to intercept and will coordinate with surviving Commonwealth forces upon arrival. The technical specifications she displayed with this announcement sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. Earth's Third Fleet alone contained more combat vessels than most Council species possessed in their entire space forces, and the data suggested it was only one of several similarly equipped formations. "How large is Earth's total military capability?" asked the collective's representative, their hive mind processing the implications of humanity's revealed strength. Sarah's smile carried a hint of the predator that lurked beneath her diplomatic exterior. Large enough to address the current threat with reserves sufficient to ensure it doesn't happen again. She didn't provide specific numbers, but her tone suggested capabilities that dwarfed what the galaxy had assumed possible from their newest member. The careful ambiguity was intentional, allowing each species to imagine whatever scale of human military power would most effectively serve their own political calculations. The communication from Earth's Third Fleet arrived with remarkable speed, providing real-time tactical updates as they approached Wolf 359. Sarah shared selected information with the Tactical Center, giving the assembled delegates their first glimpse of human military doctrine in action. "Earth Fleet reports contact with unknown vessels," she announced, studying the incoming data. "Enemy quantum interference is having minimal effect on our communication systems. We're maintaining contact with Commonwealth forces trapped in the system." This revelation sent another shock through the Tactical Center. Earth's technology was apparently immune to the quantum disruption that had crippled every other Council fleet, suggesting either superior defensive systems or a fundamentally different approach to space communications. Vorpak's metallic form leaned forward with obvious interest. "How is your fleet maintaining communications through quantum interference that has blocked all our systems?" Sarah's explanation was carefully crafted to reveal capability without exposing methodology. Human communications technology developed along different lines than galactic standard systems. Our approach to quantum mechanics emphasizes stability over efficiency, making our systems more resistant to disruption. It was technically accurate, while concealing the fact that Earth's military communications used quantum encryption methods that were actually enhanced by the type of disruption the attackers were generating. Human forces could not only communicate through the interference, but could use it to strengthen their own signal security. The tactical display updated with stunning information. Earth's Third Fleet had not only maintained contact with trapped Commonwealth forces, but was actively coordinating a counterattack against the unknown vessels. The enemy's technological superiority was being systematically neutralized by human tactical doctrine that treated superior enemy capabilities as problems to be solved rather than insurmountable obstacles. Commonwealth forces report unknown vessels withdrawing from Wolf 359, Vorpak announced, their cybernetic voice carrying amazement. Earth fleet has somehow forced the attackers to disengage. This is the first successful defense of any targeted system. Similar updates began arriving from Tau Ceti and Ross 248 as additional human fleets engaged the attackers. In each case, the pattern was similar: initial contact, brief engagement, and enemy withdrawal. The unknown vessels that had terrorized the galaxy's most powerful military forces were retreating when faced with human opposition. Kethvar's serpentine form had gone rigid with what Sarah recognized as shock and growing fear. The political implications of Earth's military success were becoming impossible to ignore. Humanity had revealed capabilities that exceeded those of species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. "How many fleets does Earth possess?" he asked, his earlier hostility replaced by barely concealed alarm. Sarah's smile became genuinely predatory for the first time since her assignment to the Council. "Enough, Representative Kethvar." More than enough. The transformation in the tactical center's atmosphere was palpable. Delegates who had spent years treating humanity as junior members of galactic civilization were rapidly recalculating their assumptions. Earth had not simply revealed hidden military capabilities, they had demonstrated technological and tactical superiority over threats that had overwhelmed everyone else. Speaker Morelden's ancient voice carried newfound respect when they addressed Sarah. "The Council owes Earth a significant debt for their intervention in this crisis. We would appreciate continued coordination as we work to identify and address the source of these attacks." It was a formal acknowledgement of humanity's new status within galactic politics, but Sarah knew the real changes were only beginning. The attackers had been repelled, but they hadn't been defeated. More importantly, the revelation of human military power had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic politics in ways that no one fully understood yet. "Earth is honored to contribute to Council security," Sarah replied diplomatically. "We look forward to working with all member species to ensure this threat doesn't recur." Her words were measured and professional, but everyone in the tactical center understood what had just happened. The quiet diplomat who had spent 2 years carefully building relationships and demonstrating competence had revealed that her species possessed the military capability to dominate the galaxy if they chose to do so. The unknown attackers had inadvertently triggered exactly the kind of crisis that would justify Earth revealing their true potential. Whether that had been coincidence or something more deliberate remained to be seen, but the immediate result was clear. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows and claimed their place among the galaxy's great powers. As reports continued arriving from the 3 battle zones confirming Earth's successful defense of all targeted systems, Sarah Chen prepared for the most challenging phase of her diplomatic career. She had spent 2 years learning to navigate galactic politics as a representative of a minor power seeking acceptance. Now she would have to master an entirely different game as the voice of a species that had just proven they could protect or threaten any civilization in the galaxy. The mask had fallen, and there was no putting it back on. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly capable of, and Sarah Chen would be their guide to that revelation. Whether the journey would lead to cooperation or conflict remained to be determined, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The aftermath of humanity's military intervention created a strange calm in the council chambers. Reports continued streaming in from the 3 defended systems, painting a picture of thorough and efficient victory that left even experienced military strategists struggling to understand what they had witnessed. The unknown attackers hadn't simply been repelled. They had been systematically dismantled by human forces that seemed to treat superior alien technology as an interesting puzzle rather than an insurmountable obstacle. Sarah Chen sat in her familiar chair, reviewing tactical reports on her datapad, while delegates around her engaged in hushed conversations that frequently included glances in her direction. The transformation in how others perceived her was complete and irreversible. The quiet diplomat who had spent 2 years building consensus and solving problems had revealed herself as the representative of a military power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had previously encountered. The Council recognizes Representative Chen for an update on the military situation, Speaker Moore Eldon announced, their ancient voice carrying a respect that hadn't been present even a day earlier. Sarah rose with her characteristic grace, but there was something different in her posture, a confidence that hadn't been visible before, as if she had finally stopped holding herself back. She activated her display and shared information that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Earth's fleets report complete neutralization of the attacking forces, she announced, her voice maintaining its diplomatic calm while delivering words that struck the chamber like hammer blows. 5 vessels escaped beyond our sensor range, but not before we acquired comprehensive scans of their technology and tactical capabilities. The casual mention of comprehensive scans sent ripples of alarm through the assembled delegates. Species that had struggled even to detect the attackers were learning that humanity had not only defeated them but had apparently captured detailed intelligence about their capabilities and origins. Vorpak's metallic form leaned forward with obvious interest. The Commonwealth would appreciate access to any intelligence regarding these attackers' technology and origins. Our preliminary analysis suggests they possessed capabilities beyond known galactic standards. Sarah's smile carried undertones that made several delegates deeply uncomfortable. Earth is prepared to share relevant intelligence with the Council, but our analysis has revealed disturbing information about the true nature of this threat. She gestured to her display, which now showed detailed schematics of the attacking vessels. The technology was clearly advanced, but what made delegates lean forward with growing alarm was the notation showing design elements that drew from multiple Council species engineering approaches. These vessels represent a synthesis of Council member technologies, Sarah continued, her diplomatic training allowing her to deliver devastating information with clinical detachment. Drive systems derived from Zephyrian crystal manipulation, weapons based on Maritime Federation fluid dynamics principles, defensive systems utilizing hegemony-scale armor concepts. Someone with access to multiple species classified military designs coordinated this attack. The implication struck the chamber like a physical blow. The unknown attackers weren't aliens from beyond Council space. They were using Council technology turned against its creators. Someone within their own civilization had orchestrated these attacks, combining the military secrets of multiple species into weapons designed to destroy their former allies. Kethvar's serpentine form coiled with visible tension. You're suggesting these attacks came from within Council membership? That's an extremely serious accusation requiring substantial evidence. Sarah's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes carried a coldness that made several delegates reconsider their previous assessments of human diplomatic limitations. Representative Kethvar, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts derived from detailed analysis of captured technology and interrogation of surviving attackers. The word interrogation hung in the air with ominous implications. Delegates who had assumed the attacking vessels would self-destruct or leave no survivors were learning that humanity had somehow captured enemy personnel alive and extracted information from them. The methods employed remained unspecified, but the efficiency suggested capabilities that extended far beyond conventional military engagement. Earth's intelligence services have confirmed the identity of the organization behind these attacks. Sarah continued, her voice taking on undertones that made hardened warriors shift uncomfortably. A coalition of rogue elements from 12 different Council species operating from hidden bases in uncharted space, funded and coordinated by individuals who possess detailed knowledge of our defensive protocols and industrial capabilities. She paused, allowing the implications to settle before delivering the information that would reshape galactic politics forever. The coalition was led by former Hegemony intelligence operative Sekthara, working with Maritime Federation Admiral Wellnox and Zephyrian engineer Prime Yel Kanan, among others. Their plan was to weaken Council defenses sufficiently to allow conquest by their combined forces, with each leader claiming dominion over their former species' territories. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Delegates turned to stare at their colleagues with new suspicion, wondering which other members of their governments might be involved in the conspiracy. The careful trust that held galactic civilization together was cracking under the weight of betrayal from within. But Sarah wasn't finished. Our interrogation of the conspiracy's leadership revealed additional disturbing information. This wasn't their first attempt to destabilize Council authority. They were responsible for the trade disputes that have plagued the Council for the past 5 years, the border conflicts in the Vega sector, and the industrial accidents that crippled 3 major shipbuilding facilities last year. Each revelation hit like a separate blow, recontextualizing events that delegates had attributed to natural political tensions or industrial misfortune. The galaxy's recent troubles hadn't been the normal friction of diverse civilizations learning to coexist. They had been deliberately orchestrated by traitors working to weaken the entire system from within. Zeftal's crystalline form had dimmed to barely visible levels, their harmonic voice carrying distress frequencies that made other delegates wince. Engineer Prime Yelkanen has been missing for 6 months. We assumed they were conducting classified research in deep space laboratories. To learn they were betraying everything our species stands for, the young Zephyrian's anguish was echoed in various forms throughout the chamber as delegates grappled with the revelation that trusted colleagues had been systematically betraying their own civilizations. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, reaching into the highest levels of multiple governments and spanning years of careful preparation. Thelcora's aquatic form rippled with the kind of deep currents that indicated profound emotional distress. Admiral Wellnox commanded our home defense fleet. They had access to every classified military protocol the Maritime Federation possessed. The scope of potential compromise, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Every delegate was performing similar calculations, wondering how much classified information their species' traitors had shared with the conspiracy. The damage to galactic security would take years to assess and longer to repair. Speaker Mor Eldon's ancient voice carried weariness that suggested the weight of millennia. The Council is grateful for Earth's intervention and intelligence gathering. However, this information raises questions about how humanity was able to achieve such comprehensive results so quickly. Your species' capabilities appear to exceed our previous understanding by a significant margin. It was a diplomatic way of asking the question that every delegate was thinking. How powerful was humanity really, and what did their demonstrated capabilities mean for the future of galactic politics? Sarah had been preparing for this moment throughout her assignment, knowing that eventually Earth's true potential would be revealed and she would need to manage the consequences. Earth's defensive preparations have been extensive, she replied, choosing her words with the care of someone defusing an explosive device. Our species' history taught us that survival often depends on being prepared for threats you haven't anticipated yet. We developed capabilities designed to address unknown dangers, which proved applicable to the current crisis. It was a masterful non-answer that acknowledged superior capability while framing it as defensive rather than aggressive. However, Sarah knew that diplomatic language couldn't disguise the fundamental reality. Humanity had just demonstrated military and intelligence capabilities that exceeded those of civilizations with millennia more experience. Kethvar's earlier hostility had transformed into something approaching fear. Your intelligence services captured and interrogated the conspiracy's leadership within hours of initial contact. Your fleets neutralized threats that overwhelmed our most advanced forces. Your technology operates at efficiency levels that appear to exceed theoretical limitations. The galaxy deserves to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The challenge was direct and unavoidable. Sarah had reached the moment where diplomatic evasion would no longer suffice, where the careful fiction of human limitations had to be abandoned entirely. Her instructions from Earth had been clear. If forced to reveal their true position, do so completely rather than allowing continued uncertainty to breed fear and hostility. Sarah Chen smiled, and for the first time since her assignment began, she allowed the predator that lurked beneath her diplomatic exterior to show itself clearly. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones that made several delegates step backward despite the impossibility of physical threat in the council chambers. Representative Kefvar, you and your colleagues have spent 2 years treating humanity as junior members of galactic civilization, assuming our peaceful approach indicated limitations rather than choice. You've made the same mistake that many species throughout our history have made, confusing restraint with weakness. She activated her personal display, showing information that Earth had never shared with the galaxy before. Fleet deployment charts, technological capability assessments, industrial production figures, and strategic planning documents that painted a picture of human civilization that bore no resemblance to the careful fiction they had maintained. Earth possesses 47 battle fleets, each larger than the total military forces of most Council species. Our industrial capacity exceeds that of the entire Council by a factor of 6. Our technology operates on principles that most galactic civilizations have theoretical knowledge of but lack the engineering capability to implement. We have been restraining ourselves not from weakness but from a desire to integrate peacefully into galactic society. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of alien technology processing information that challenged every assumption about the balance of galactic power. Earth hadn't been seeking admission to an established hierarchy. They had been choosing to join a system they could have dominated through force if they had wished. Our species learned long ago that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy your enemies, but in the ability to choose not to, Sarah continued, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of absolute certainty. We came to the stars seeking cooperation and mutual benefit, but we also came prepared for the possibility that cooperation might not be offered. Vorpak's cybernetic features processed the revealed information with visible strain. Earth could have claimed dominion over Council space at any time in the past 2 years. Why choose the path of diplomatic integration instead? Sarah's expression softened slightly, returning to something closer to her familiar diplomatic demeanor. Because conquest creates enemies, while cooperation creates allies. Humanity has learned that the strongest civilizations are built on trust and mutual benefit rather than fear and subjugation. We joined the Council because we believed in its principles, not because we needed its protection. The revelation recontextualized every interaction delegates had experienced with humanity over the past 2 years. Sarah's careful problem-solving, her diplomatic patience, her species' technological contributions, all of it had been the careful restraint of a civilization that could have taken whatever it wanted by force but chose to earn acceptance through merit instead. Speaker Morelden's multiple eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that suggested profound recalculation of long-held assumptions. The Council faces a choice, Representative Chen. How does humanity envision our future relationship given this clarification of relative capabilities? Sarah had been preparing for this question since the day she accepted her assignment. The answer would determine whether the revelation of human power led to a new golden age of galactic cooperation or an arms race that could tear civilization apart. Earth envisions the same future we have always sought, she replied, her voice carrying the sincerity that had served her throughout her diplomatic career. A galaxy where diverse civilizations work together to solve common problems and explore the universe's endless possibilities. The only difference is that now we can guarantee that future will be protected against those who would destroy it for personal gain. She gestured to the tactical displays showing the destroyed conspiracy forces. The universe is vast and dangerous, filled with threats we haven't discovered yet and challenges we can't anticipate. Humanity believes the galaxy's species are stronger together than they could ever be alone, but that cooperation requires protection from those who would exploit peaceful intentions for destructive purposes. It was both a reassurance and a warning, delivered with the kind of diplomatic skill that had made Sarah Chen famous throughout the Council. Earth offered continued partnership and mutual benefit, but the implicit message was clear. Attempts to exploit or betray that partnership would face consequences beyond anything the galaxy had previously imagined. As the session continued and delegates began processing the implications of humanity's revelation, Sarah Chen reflected on her journey from obscure diplomat to the voice of galactic civilization's newest great power. She had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations in integrating Earth into galactic society, but the true test of her diplomatic skills was only beginning. The quiet diplomat had revealed herself as something far more dangerous, a weapon that said please and thank you before reshaping the entire galaxy according to her species' vision of what civilization should be. The Council now faced a choice: embrace humanity's partnership and protection, or risk discovering what happened to those who threatened the future that Earth had chosen to defend. Looking around the chamber at delegates who were seeing her clearly for the first time, Sarah Chen smiled the patient smile of someone who had always known exactly how this conversation would end. After all, they had attacked first at the Council, not knowing the human diplomat was a walking execution of anyone foolish enough to threaten the peace she had been sent to preserve. The galaxy would never be the same, but then again, it never really had been safe until now. They attacked first at the Council, not knowing the human diplomat was a walking execution. HFY.